Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 86th ever Highlight Haven interview. My name's Matthew Heiserman, and today we are joined by the owner of MatchQuarters, Cody Alexander. Cody, it's great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely, and getting right into it, starting with your journey. As I mentioned during the intro, you're the owner of Match Quarters, as well as the head of football operations for Field Vision Sports. I just want to start by asking when you first knew that you wanted to work in the sports industry, and how do you describe the journey you've taken to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to be a coach.
Mhm.
My dad was a coach and was a high school teacher. So to me, that was like the easiest path to get
Yeah.
into it. I wanted to be a college coach. I wanted to work professionally. It's just to get into that takes some time. So the path of least resistance was I'll go be a teacher and I'll be a coach. And
Mhm.
that's kind of what I set out to do. And that's what I got. And then I wanted to, again, like I said, I wanted to coach at the college level. And so I was able to get on at Baylor.
Yep.
I worked my way into being a GA, had a son. Things and timing didn't work out. So I ended up going back to the high school level, worked there for about 10 years, but it really was around 2015, 2016. I started getting the itch that I wanted to kind of create content and I wanted to do it around football. I couldn't find any books that I really liked and I couldn't find was really good enough that that gave me the information and was willing to teach a lot of playbooks, a lot of dense coach jargon. I'm for of like just different ways that people talk about football. It's really dense, especially on defense side. So I just started writing, put it on the worst place that you possibly put it on, which is the internet. People liked it. And so that from there grew. And then, COVID hit, which was one of the better things to happen to me because that's when I started doing subscription based, started getting paid for it. And then eventually now I've been doing this full time for the last 2 years.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And, you kind of touched on this, but you've had lots of coaching experience throughout your career. You coached many high school football teams, and then you were a defensive graduate assistant at Baylor University from 2012 to 2014. How would you say that your time coaching has impacted your perspective when analyzing defenses and just giving you a better understanding of the ins and outs of an NFL and college football defense?
Yeah, I'm not a system guy. I don't adhere to a system. Even the system that I'm kind of anchored to, the Phil Bennett quarter system, 4-2-5 system that we played at Baylor, while I was there, even that is an amalgamation of different things. It's a Jimmy Johnson quarters modified to defend Art Briles, which has also got a blitz package in it that links itself to the Ryan tree, swipe coverage from, you know, the Bear 46. It's just like a million different things. And
Yeah.
so what it was, the thing too is like I look at match quarters almost as like an academic pursuit. Like
Mhm. Yeah.
I am constantly trying to learn, and part of that is I am a teacher. So going back to that, like, I've taught at multiple different high schools. I've taught at a really affluent high school. I've taught at a Title One high school. I've had kids that, had to work all through football season. I've had kids that'll probably never have to work a day in their lives. And so to me, like I think that helps me in that sense of match quarters just because I've had to teach at so many different levels and had to meet like football, but also in the classroom. I mean, look, dude, I've had to deal with teenage girls and trying to get them to be interested in U.S. history. So there is nothing that scares me
Mhm.
when it comes to football. So football's easy. So to
Yeah.
me, I think that kind of background and being able to meet people where they are and having to do that has really helped out match quarters and really helps me out when I come to it and the way I look at football and then the way that I internalize it and then put it out there to the world.
Mhm. And during your time at Baylor, you worked with a lot of great players such as Xavier Howard, Ahmad Dixon, and Dimitri Goodson. All three of those guys ended up making the NFL.
Yeah.
And I specifically mentioned those guys. There were other NFL players who you worked with. They all worked as cornerbacks or safeties, just a defensive back, and I know that's where you specifically coached at the high school level. You coached a lot of secondary players. So what were you able to learn from those guys over the few years that you were with Baylor?
Yeah, Dimitri Goodson is actually a really good example. I mean, he was the
Mhm.
starting point guard at Gonzaga. I think people
Yeah,
forget
yeah,
that
sure.
about him. He actually quit basketball to come and play football at Baylor. And I think the way that he approached the game of just kind of brand new to it, wanted to learn the game. You know, he'd been
Mhm.
around the game forever. He's a Texas kid. I think his brother was a running back for A&M. I think even kind of played some running back for the Raiders in the NFL as well. So I mean, the kid came from a really athletic background. But to me, watching him internalize the game, start playing the game, bring a kind of a basketball mentality to it, I
Mhm.
thought was really interesting. You know, Xavier Howard is another really good example of a kid that was just an absolute freak. Kind of, we got him late in the process because a lot of people didn't think he was going to qualify. He ended up qualifying super late. I think he qualified on like the last ACT you could take. Carlton Buckles, who still coaches,
Yeah.
at the college level. That was one of the things. He stayed on him. We got him. He was one of those where you could just tell instantly, like that kid's different from the other kids that we've had. And then Ahmad Dixon, look, the one thing that anybody that's met Ahmad is he wants
Mhm.
to have fun. And I think football is fun. And I think the one thing that the thing with Ahmad that's really always stuck with me is just like, look, this is a kid's game and it should be fun. It's a game that we get to coach as an adult. I get to coach a game that kids play, and that I always kept that into perspective because Ahmad was always about, how can we make this fun? Football's fun. Getting out here, we get to play football, we get to coach football. That to me is what I pulled away from him.
Mhm. Absolutely. And you mentioned the 6 books that you've written about defense. You sort of talked about why you decided to write them, but can you just break down what the writing process looked like and just the general process of getting those published?
Yeah, so I got really lucky when I started the blog, which was Match Quarters,
Mhm.
to get hooked up with Chris Brown, who wrote the Smart Football books, which were really the only books I read in my 20s that I was like, okay, like this
Yeah.
is a good football book.
Mhm.
A lot of coaches write, it ends up being jargon. It ends up, or they have somebody else write it for them. It ends up being lost in translation. You're playing telephone. So to me, I wanted that, and I was able to get hooked up with him really early in the process of Match Quarters. And one of the things he said is like, look, take your best articles, turn them into a book. You can always expand on them, and so that's what I did. I set out for a full year. I was like, I'm gonna kind of write my, manifesto on how I think football should be played, kind of the lessons that I learned, defending the Art Briles system for the 3 years that I was at Baylor, kind of some other things that I had pulled around as I started really studying the game. And that's where the genesis of cautious aggression came from, because I wanted to kind of lay out that philosophy. I could see where football was going. As a historian myself, I wanted to see, I could see where football was going. And to this day, a lot of the things in cautious aggression, if you will hear coaches talk about
Mhm.
today of fluid fronts, how to set up your defense, eliminating vacancies on the field pre-snap, forcing the ball into certain areas, forcing the ball into the boundary, a lot of these things that are fundamental into that. I was able to do that. So that process was really easy. As I got down the line, what were some of the other books? My Match Quarters books. I wanted a guidebook because there is not one. I wanted a guidebook on split field coverage. How do I teach it? What are some things that I can do? And then how to actually implement it? What is the science and the philosophy behind it, the footwork and why we're doing that, and kind of put it in? Because look, if you want to become an expert at something, write about it. Anybody can get on and do a video. Videos are easy. Now, there a lot of here we are talking on a video, right? And
Mhm.
we're going to put this on YouTube. It's going to be on there and people are going to consume it visually.
Mhm.
That's the easy button. You got to be able to write it down. And anytime,
Yeah.
and two, like people that will tell you like really good content, even on YouTube, there's some sort of a, they're writing down what they're going to say. There's a script to it, and those words matter. And so to me, that's kind of like where the writing process comes in, is I wanted to really put down on paper some really good thought process on football. And then once I did that, I wanted to, I'm a historian, so I wanted to do a history of football, which was hybrids, the making of a modern defense, essentially going through where we started to
Yeah.
how we got to really. I wrote this in 2018, so the 3 high revolution was just beginning. I wrote I where I thought I was kind of invaluable at Baylor was the opponent breakdown process. Wrote a book about that. Anchor Points talks about the front, and then I wanted to create not a playbook, but within showing you how a playbook structured and how it works, how to actually implement from all of the people that I know and the information that I'm privy to, how are people sequencing their calls, because I think sequencing is important. So that's kind of where I got with the books, and there's always a why behind it, why I wanted to do that. And that's what those are from.
Yeah, 100%. And, why, I guess, did you choose to make defense your specialty over everything else? And was it always like that even when you started watching football?
Look, I've always tried to play offense. My dad's offense coordinator for a long
Mhm.
time. I always try to play offense. I always got put on defense.
Yeah.
I was always the one white kid in the corner room. That was me. I was that guy. I'm good at a couple of things. I'm good at football, and I'm good at running fast in a straight line. And so that has just kind of ended up being what I ended up doing. I could backpedal pretty well, and I could play DB. I kept trying to go to receiver, and I would keep getting pushed back to the defensive side. And so even then, I'm looking out. I know DB really well. That's what I play. That's what I know. And so when I got at the high school level, and then even into college, look, I went to Baylor. I'm not family with the Bryles. I'm not related to them at all. I didn't coach with any of them back when the Stephenville days, when that system was going. So it was very clear, you are not going to be getting into this room. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to defense now when I'm at Baylor too. So it's just one of those things. Look, I've tried to go offense. God just keeps putting me back on defense. I think it's harder. I think
Mhm.
that I'm fully okay with that being my path at this point. I think when I was 25, I wasn't. I wanted to be the next Nick Saban or Bill Belichick, but I feel like now I'm half a year away from being 40, and I'm like, look, this is my path, this is my purpose. I'm supposed to be on here to create a platform of education for defense, because there just isn't anything like it out there,
Yeah.
and there's just not a lot of information that you can actually get through.
Now, getting into some systems and schemes, recently you broke down Mike McDonald's three buzz concept. For the people watching, can you just explain what that concept is and what changes we can expect to see in Seattle's defense as Mike McDonald enters his second season as the Seahawks head coach?
Yeah, so 3 buzz just means we are going to take the strong safety, so the safety to the passing strength. Usually there's a nickel to that side, so
Mhm.
your overhang to that side. We're going to drop him inside that nickel. So he's actually going to be the strong hook defender. A lot of times this is used in heavier sets, or like heavier as in like 12 personnel, meaning that we've got 2 tight ends, 1 running back. 21 personnel means we've got a fullback, a running back, and 1 tight end. And so usually when we're doing that, we're trying to add that. I thought that was one concept that kept showing up. Now, the caveat to that is he's doing it from a too high shell. And that covers disguise is really one of those trends that we're seeing in the NFL, which is again why I wanted to cover it, because too high shell, rotating to single high, covers disguise, those are all that. So what do I expect? I thought it was very telling that they went and they got a safety in the second round, the big kid by the Imawari. Hopefully I said his name right, from South Carolina. He's going to probably play nickel. And why are you going to do that? Because you're going to want to bump Devin Witherspoon out. People forget Witherspoon was a top 5 corner in the draft. He came out with Sauce Gardner. He's just as good outside as he is inside. They don't have a really good third corner. You want to play him outside. I mean, think about that. You got a dude like Devin Witherspoon, who's about 6'3", 200 pounds. And then you go on the other side, and you got Reek Woolen, who's 6'4", 205, 210 pounds on a good day. Those are pretty big corners, and both of them can play man coverage. And that answers a lot of questions that you have. And that 3 safety is another trend, which is another reason why I want to do it. So going forward, I think DeMarcus Lawrence too is really interesting. I think you're going to see more 4 down structures from them. So yeah, I'm interested. If there's 2 things that I would see it, expect more 3 safety big nickel looks, and then expect a more 4 down with DeMarcus Lawrence as kind of that run stopping defensive end.
And then the other trend that I want to take a look at that you recently broke down was the wave concept, which is heavily used by the Minnesota Vikings. Can you just describe the idea of the wave concept and specifically how defenses can work to contain that going forward?
Yeah, so the wave is built on top of pretty much a best practice 2-man route from the West Coast offense, which is called a Yankee. A lot of
Mhm.
people call it cross country, which means you're going to get a condensed set, means everybody's going to be tight, typically going to be in 12 personnel, 21 personnel. There's going to be a play action involved. We're going to have a post route on one side, and we're going to have a Dover or a deep over
Yeah.
route coming underneath of it. So we're creating a layer. Most defenses now are pretty attuned to when they get that set. That's why I think the vertical dropouts, a couple where the Packers would ran this a ton, where we're pushing to about 20 and then we just drop out. That's kind of been the answer to, instead of running Yankee, we're going to run these, I call them dropouts at this 20, but we're getting the same concept. What Wave does is they say we're going to add basically 2 post routes. We're going to have a high post and a low post, and then we're going to add the Dover route on top of it. So it really drains out your vertical. It really plays with that corner on the backside, and it really plays with your rules, because you think, oh, I've got the cross country problem solved. Oh crap, there's an extra guy
Yeah.
running
Yeah.
through there, and it's also a
Mhm.
deep shot route. Trust me, I've talked to more people about the wave concept in the last 6 months since basically since the football season's over than anything else. Maybe run game a little bit, just because we saw
Mhm.
the reemergence of the run game, which has a lot to do with sub packages. So that, if there's one pass concept, and of course the Vikings are kind of the poster child for that. They did it a ton with Addison and Jefferson, because you can really push a vertical column with that, and then kind of sneak in your other receiver. Or hey, we're really concentrating on Jefferson and Addison, and then we can sneak a tight end on some of that on the lower one. And remember, Hawkinson can still catch the ball a lot pretty well too. So way defenses can adjust to that, a lot more quarters. You're going to see, I think, quarters coverage, or at least these hybrid, quarter, half, quarter coverage is basically the Fangio system, Fangio adjacent system guys. I think cross keying some of this stuff is going to be something that people are starting to pick up on, that I've talked to people. So that, to me, there's a few ways to do it. I thought the Jets is a good example. If you want to see a good example of it, I thought
Mhm.
Ulbrich and Saleh in the
Yeah.
Jets did a really good job against the Vikings against that, especially running some quarter, half concepts over that. They kind of give you a good idea of how to do that. You have to kind of understand where the 2 verticals are coming from. That
Mhm.
tends to be a little bit more predictable. You can figure that out. Once you figure that out, you can kind of rotate your coverage to kind of figure that out.
And then the other day on your podcast, you talked about the explosion in designed QB runs that we've been seeing throughout the NFL. And, how effective could you see design QB runs becoming, especially like over the next few years with quarterbacks like Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson taking over the league?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I think one of my buddies that does analytics, he looked at the best runners, just designed runs.
Hmm.
So anybody that carries the ball, it's a designed run for that. Who was the best running back like in the last 10 years? And it's Lamar Jackson. So it's like,
Yeah.
because you see those YouTube videos of like, hey, I put Lamar at running back and he's still like the number 5 running back ranked
Yeah.
in Madden. Well, it is actually true. The deal with designed runs, and here's the asterisk to it. This isn't college. You're not going to run Lamar Jackson 20 times in a game. You're not going to run Jalen Hurts 20 times in a game. Jaden Daniels, you're definitely not going to run
Yeah.
20 times in a game. He's get broken half. So what you're talking about is like a guy, even like a Josh Allen, of these are very curated times that we're going to run this. This is a got to have it down. This is a down that, hey, we think that we're lulling them to sleep. Let's get a chunk play on the ground here. Hey, maybe they're packing the box a little too tight. Maybe they're creeping that safety down a little bit more. Let's start getting some of these QB runs. Because here's the thing, single high coverage is still king in the NFL. I know we talk about quarters, but it's all relative, right? Like quarters is moving up, split field coverage is moving up in usage, but it's still a single high dominant world that we live in the NFL. Well, what's a way that you attack close post coverages? You do that through design quarterback runs, because now your quarterback player is in the middle of the field. So if you don't have a very good safety that can run that alley, or you're doing some different things in the back end and he can't just get to the box right now, that's typically when you run into some issues. So these runs are really amplifying your run game, keeping the defense honest to where they can't just key on the running back. Oh, you're in this set. Let's load up the box. We know you're doing this. It actually adds value. And they tend to be relatively explosive off of that. And it adds to kind of that scramble piece that we see from these guys as well.
Mhm. And besides what we've already talked about, are there any other offensive or defensive trends that you think could become more popularized over the next few years, both in the NFL and college football?
Yeah, I really think offensively, we can start with offense. I think offensively, we're going to see a recommitment to the run game. We're
Mhm.
obviously, I think, play action and quick game because of zone. How do you attack zone? You attack zone quick and underneath, get these guys moving. I think too, the problem that we're finding in the NFL now is if we're going to run drop back, or these elongated passing routes against zone, I'm going to end up being a check down Charlie, and I don't want to end up doing that. So how do we get the ball into these receivers' hands on the move and quick? We're going to do it with quick game. Okay, we're going to get it with these dash concepts, which are kind of these half rollout concepts where we're getting the pocket moving. Then we're getting guys moving. Maybe I'm rolling one way and I'm sending the guy the other. So we're kind of getting that cross
Mhm.
motion. We're really stretching the defense. Those are going to be ways that I think that we're going to see this defensively. I think just the fact that part of this trend going back to the run game, play action, quick game is going to be 12 personnel using tight ends. Fullbacks are coming back in vogue. Well, what does that do? That changes the way that you play defense, especially on your sub packages. I got to get bigger guys in there,
Mhm.
right? And so that is going to be one of those where more three safety looks. You can just, I think what the Cardinals have been doing is essentially a college defense, yes, but it's able to survive because of Buda Baker. I think the Chargers also do a really good job with a lot of three high stuff on third down. I think those are going to be some trends that we see. I think we're also seeing kind of a spot drop revolution. Offenses now know how to beat all your match rules. I mean, that's the first
Mhm.
thing OCs are doing. They want to know, okay, what are their main coverages? What are the main coverage buckets? 2, 3, 4. What are their rules? How can we break them? Boom, there's our game plan already for us. Okay, well, if I go spot drop, I'm literally just getting to a spot. I'm playing vision off of it. Quarterback's going to have to really go. Receivers are going to have to start converting. Now you talk about, Kurt Warner's one of those guys that you hear all the time talking about pure progression. We got to get back to pure progression.
Mhm.
Oh, this is all West Coast offense stuff, right? 1, 2, 3, check down,
Mhm.
right? We only throw the alert if he's just naked running down the field, right? So I think that's kind of where we are now, and you can kind of see where we're headed, and those are some trends to look for.
Mhm. And as someone who dissects and breaks down every team's defensive system, are there any NFL teams who currently have a scheme that's maybe ahead of its time and you could see other teams start to pick up that scheme in the future?
Yeah, Cardinals. I think everybody's interested with the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are everybody's like, okay, wait a second. They're creating a
Yeah.
3-4, but they're doing it from a 3 high. They have hybrid players everywhere. They're able to do it. I mean, I'm really interested. I really hope that the Cardinals do really well on defense this year,
Mhm.
because they now finally have the athletes to do it. They have, they went out and got a defensive line. They got a new inside linebacker. I think the Wilson Jr. kid or Wilson Sr. does a really good job at outside linebacker. Buddha obviously is an all pro. They got to figure the cornerback spot. They like Max Melton. They got the Will Howard kid. So I think basically my point is if this is successful, I think more teams start to implement it. I think a guy that has been ahead of the trend for a long time is Spagnuolo. You go and look at their defense. Everybody's running palms pressures now, which are 5-man pressures with quarters behind it. Vikings with Flores, I think everybody's kind of looking into them because look, their blitz design is very simple. It's just plug all the gaps, overload the edge. You can't do your bootleg and dash concepts anymore. And then I'm also going to send more than you can handle off the edge. And then we're plugging all the gaps for your run. You can't run. I think the Buccaneers and the Broncos blitzing on early downs are also another kind of thing that I think it's going to switch. Those guys are all ahead of the trend. I think more people, we're just not going to it'll be interesting. I don't think we'll get to college blitz rates, which are essentially all over 30%. Most colleges are blitzing at least a third of the time. Some are even more. NFL, we don't see that as much. It's usually less than a 30%. So I think that metric will also get pushed up as well.
And one thing that's really important when breaking down defensive systems is knowing how to correctly watch all 22 film. And I kind of want to ask you about that. What goes into breaking down all 22 film, and what are some of the main things you like to pay attention to?
Yeah, first off, start with down and distance. That
Mhm,
sets the table. Tells you where they are on the field, what they have to get to. If it's first down, second down, what is the distance on those downs?
mhm,
So it kind of gives you an expectation. Then you want to look at front structure. Front structure is essentially where are the defensive linemen, where are the anchor
mhm,
points. Those are where the bubbles are. So that's where the protection is going to be set if it's a pass. That's where the run games are going to be attacking. Modern offenses are trying to attack that B gap. So are they in an even front where you have an open B gap, or are they in an odd front where the B gaps are closed? Okay, that's going to change the way that we do this. Also, to your blitz structures, your coverage structures are all predicated on those anchor points. And so to me, just because we have a too high shell does not mean that we're going to run cover two or we're going to run quarters. It just means that we have a too high shell. And so then I want to watch the safety rotation. And then at the end of the day, I want to see how are the corners playing? Are they underneath? Are they on top? Are they inside? Are they outside? A lot of times that can give you context clues for also what are those coverages as well. Don't watch the ball, watch the anchor points, and then see how they move. And my advice is for everybody is to start at a level. Like if you played linebacker, start at the linebacker play
mhm,
and then learn the front structures, then work back to the coverage. The other thing too with the NFL though, you kind of want to learn coverages because it is a passing game. The quarterbacks are important. So seeing the patterns, seeing how guys are matching up. Why are they dropping the safety weak? Why are they dropping the safety strong? Why are they rotating the cover two to the nickel? Why are they rotating the cover two away? Why are they running quarters? How are they functioning in quarters? How are they layering on top? How do they adjust to motion? First, learn the structure.
yep,
And then as you get to the pre-snap, I think a lot of people, it's awesome. I love it when they talk to players about pre-snap. Like Luke Kuechly is the best at this. Like if you ever do it, you can just see it's like Beautiful Mind. Like you can just see that gif of like all the math problems going in his head. But even offensive linemen, when they start talking about pre-snap, I don't think a lot of people that aren't familiar with football understand what goes into pre-snap. So when I'm attacking all 22, I
mhm,
want to see all the different ways, communication pieces, how are they reacting to motion, how are they aligned up, because that'll give me context clues post snap for when I see whether it's a blitz or whether it's a coverage rotation, where these guys are going to probably end up.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And you obviously have one of the smartest minds when it comes to understanding football. That said, when you're watching a game live, what are you typically paying attention to in the moment?
Well, the problem is they don't put the secondary in there half time. So I got to
Mhm,
watch the front. So I'm really looking at the front. I'm looking at protections. I'm looking at any kind of quick game. Were they getting, but I try and because I do watch the all 22 and I try and typically try and watch the game to watch the game.
Yeah.
I'm looking for turnovers, clinic turnovers, punches, rips, anything that I can get off of the TV copy. So that's usually what I'm looking for in terms of content.
Mhm.
I just
Yeah.
love it. Anytime I can see somebody punch the pocket, get that ball out. Like the peanut punch, I'm all over that. But yeah, no, that's what I'm really looking for. And then obviously, I'm just trying to see kind of how they're adjusting. What are the play calls? Down to distance. It's the same thing. You just don't get the whole picture.
And then how do you know which games you wanna go back and watch on all 22?
Yeah, typically it's going to be an anomaly, like a team wasn't supposed to win and they won, or
Mhm.
a quarterback played a bad game. Was it because of turnover? Like maybe they just had okay. Well, then how are they creating those turnovers? Did the defense
Mhm.
do something? Those are typically anytime I can watch a good on good. So top 10 DVOA offense versus top 10 DVOA defense,
Mhm.
which is an efficiency metric that I like,
Yeah, yeah.
provided by FTN. I'm in. I'll watch those games. So kind of doing that just so I can get, and two, obviously because I am in the content creation business, if it's a hot game, a lot of people are talking about it. Obviously, I probably need to go watch it defensively and see what happened on both sides of the
Mhm.
ball.
And just a few questions before we wrap things up. This upcoming season, what's one defense that we can expect to take a big jump compared to where they were defensively last year?
Colts. I think the Colts. I think Tavarius Ward, Cam Bynum. They already have a decent secondary. The linebackers are relatively good. That defensive front is a little bit better than you think. I just think they got caught in the Gus Bradley black hole where they were running 4-3 cover two, or I mean cover three, and everybody kind of knew what they were doing. You kind of were struggling on offense, and so it's a game of attrition. I think Lou Anarumo, he has some guys, he has some pieces to work with. Kenny Moore's one of the best slots. I think people forget Kenny Moore's one of the better hybrid corners. He can play outside too, just as good as he can play at nickel. So I think it fits what he's looking for. And he can kind of get back into those safety rotations. He's got two safeties that are there that are really good. I would say if there's one team that I think is going to take a massive jump, I think it's them, and I think it's the Cardinals. If the Rams can go get maybe Jair Alexander, or really they don't want Jair, they want Jalen Ramsey. If they can get Ramsey to come over there, I think it cleans up a lot of stuff in their
Mhm.
back end because their front end is really really good.
Now, I do have one final question to ask before we wrap things up. If there was one piece of advice you could give to an aspiring sports reporter or journalist like me, what would it be?
Just do your homework. Be a learner. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think too. Look, we all live by football programs. It's America. There's a football program everywhere. If I want to learn more about football, I need to go talk to coaches. Find a coaching clinic near your area where you live. Go to it. Learn football. Sit on in offense. Sit on in defense. If you have questions, reach out and ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Look, there's a lot of gatekeeping in football, especially at the coaching world. But if I can get into a clinic, just because you're not a coach doesn't mean you can't go to a clinic.
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys that will go that don't necessarily have access to NFL coaches or college coaches because they're not on the beat. They're a young guy. Hey, mom, for my birthday, I would just like you to buy me access to the Nike Coach of the Year clinics, and I can just watch clinics from guys and just to learn about topics and learn about things that I want. Or hey, mom, or dad, I want to go, grandma, I want to go to this clinic. uh, it's here. Can you take me and just drop me off? I mean, you're probably in the most safest area. You're with a bunch of coaches, right? So
Yeah.
just go. Hey, drop me off at this hotel. I'm gonna go sit in here for a couple hours and learn football. That would be my advice.
Yeah.
Is to, if you don't know, ask. Don't just put something out there because you heard it one time. If you don't understand it, ask before you put it up there. If you don't feel comfortable about it, don't put it out there, because what you don't want is a situation where you put something out and you have no idea what you're talking about, because then it just kills your integrity. It just kills what you're trying to do.
Mhm.
So that would be my advice. And don't be afraid. Look, we're all trying to learn. There's things that I don't know,
Mhm.
right? That I've got to learn. I got asked the other day about a 2-3-2 fit, and I was like, I have never heard of that before in my life. I have no idea what it is. And then I heard later on someone talked about fire zones where you have a 2, a 3, and a 2, and so you have a 2-3-2 fit, and it was like boom, light bulb went out. Now I have context to speak on that. Now I can go out and talk to people about it. And so to me, even me, who has been around it, who you perceive as an expert, there are things that I do not know.
Yeah.
Like I can't just go off and and basically like give you everything you need to know about the Saban cover 7 system, right? That's so technical and there's so many check, like I couldn't sit here and tell you everything that you need to know about that. So to me, I think find resources. There's plenty of them out there. Learn, especially in the off season. Like right now is a great time to learn. There's nothing going on right now. There's no games. You're not watching anything. Go learn and go listen to really smart people, because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to
Mhm.
meet with NFL coaches. I'm trying to meet college coaches. What are you interested in? What are you trying to do? Hey, no, I've never heard that before. Hey, I've never seen it taught that way. Explain that to me. Like, so I'm constantly on a path of trying to find the truth.
Mhm.
That's all you should be doing too.
Yeah, I really appreciate that advice. And I can't thank you enough for coming on. Is there anything else you want to say to the people watching before we wrap things up, including where they can find some of your work?
Yeah, head to matchquarters.com. Just type in matchquarters.com, sign up for the newsletter. If you don't want to be a paid subscriber, that's fine. Typically, I'm working through NFL stuff. Most of the free content I have also, I'm trying to set you up for it. Usually, paid content is actually explaining what's going on the field. So you have links to my books, links to my socials. So anything you need defensively, if you're a defensive nerd like I am, hey, Match Quarters is your defensive think tank, and just start there. There's everything you need.
Absolutely. Again, big thanks to Cody Alexander for being the 86th ever Highlight Haven interview guest. And as always, we will see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.